because of the flotilla attacks. And, well, I mean, there's many other reasons that I'm here as well, but primarily because of the flotilla attacks and trying to keep the momentum alive and use this horrible thing that has happened to push the movement forward and to educate the rest of our country as we give the most aid to Israel and are kind of financially responsible for this attack.
How do you see ending U.S. support for Israel?
Get people out of office that are supporting these kinds of funding packages in our legislature. I think that the first step is just to get into the streets and stay into the streets. Stay in the streets and educate people and talk to people like in a very level-headed way. No matter what you believe about Israel's right to exist or the Palestinians' right to their land, this is a humanitarian crisis. There are people starving and dying, and aid isn't allowed to get to them, and there's an occupation at hand. And whether or not you believe that in the history or whose fault it is, right now we know exactly whose fault it is. And we have to push our government to not be funding that, and we have to make sure that we are not passively laying and sitting on the sidelines watching it happen. I mean, because passivity is probably the worst thing that you can do. You have to be able to relate to people that don't really understand or maybe have a different understanding of history than you by talking to them about exactly what's happening right now. And maybe getting into history and all those kinds of things is really useful for some people's understanding of the conflict. But I think as far as right now, today, Israel has killed humanitarian aid activists that were trying to feed and give medical supplies to and give school supplies to a starving and impoverished group of people. And whether or not you're Jewish or you have Jewish roots like I do, I mean, it doesn't matter. What matters is that they killed people and that people are starving and dying.
So you're Jewish or you have roots?
My mother's side.
And is that why you're involved?
No, I'm not involved for any particular religious reason. I'm really interested in the way religion and politics interact with social issues, and I think that these things should be more separated than they are. I think that humanity and social rights should be separated from what religion you are or your sexuality or anything like that. Judaism is definitely not the problem. I have many Jewish friends. All Jews are not Zionists. I mean, even not all Zionists are the same. I think that what we have to realize is that we need to directly deal with the people that are causing the problem. I think that the biggest mistake that activists on our end of the spectrum make is by targeting a larger group that have nothing to do with it. Like by targeting Jews, we aren't specifically targeting the people that are actually making the problem happen, therefore doing harm to our side of the movement. Targeting Jewish people has nothing to do with this issue. There are Christian people that are more involved in funding of settlements than there are Jewish people, I mean, from the United States end. And so I think that what we have to deal with is the people that are making this happen and not the people that just happen to be Jewish.
But who is making this happen?
I mean, I think that our government is definitely making it happen by funding, and we need to target them because they're the ones with the power to distribute the funds. And the funds are what put the weapons on the Israeli commandos, and the funds are what buy those helicopters. And so we have to really decide who is the enemy here, and it's not the Jewish people, and it's not the Christian people, and it's not even all Zionists. It's the people that are violent, the people that want to discriminate against an entire population. I think that we really have to be careful about who we demonize in this situation because it's not that simple.
Craig Higgins, I'm just recently graduated from Texas State University with a master's in physics.
Why are you here today?
Well, basically to protest the flotilla massacre that the Israeli government conducted end of May, which was a Gaza Freedom Flotilla massacre. There were people that were attempting to bring in aid to the Gaza Strip in violation of the Israeli blockade. I think a better way of describing Israel would be, as Finkelstein would say, it's a crazy state. It's like this violent gangster kind of mentality, this so-called Forum of Seven, the seven guys that make all the major military decisions in Israel right now, which I'm guessing is Netanyahu. Those guys are, they have very much like a bunker kind of mentality, something that in Haaretz they described as a hilltop mentality. They don't really view the outside world as anything other than an impediment to their goal of maintaining the larger Israel that they've been trying to create since 1947. I think it's a profoundly myopic and disturbing mentality that they have, this particular group that's running Israel right now. It's created a lot of rancor all across the Middle East and throughout the world outside the United States. Well, it's like what Barack Obama said, it's essentially an unsustainable thing that they're trying to do. When you shoot people, when you shoot activists, when you conduct yourself in a belligerent manner, you don't really create any friends that way. You're creating an environment where your back's against the wall, and if you really want to go there, if you really want to have your own moment of Samson tearing down the chains in the temple, well, then you're certainly moving in that direction. And that's deeply unfortunate. I think also, if I was going to be talking to Netanyahu, I would suggest to them that their efforts to demonize and obfuscate the efforts of the boycott, divestment, and sanctions that's going on throughout the world, it's a deeply misguided effort on their part. They see leftists, left-wing activists as an existential threat, and I think that this particular event, the Flotilla Massacre, is related to their efforts to demonize the left and to demonize activists that are calling world attention to their crimes. The United States is their main pet, right? Because of the Israel lobby and because of the U.S. military-industrial complex. A veil of secrecy, I would say, a veil of propaganda creates this level of secrecy in the U.S. that keeps U.S. popular opinion either in Israel's corner or at least not in the Palestinian corner, because after all, most Americans don't know anything about Palestinians.
What do you think it's going to take to end the siege and to stop Israel's madness?
I don't have a good answer for that. To understand this current group that's running Israel right now, I mean, bear in mind that Netanyahu's father was a major financial backer of Zionism in the 1940s prior to the creation of the State of Israel. This is a guy who has a deep ideological commitment to the idea of Eretz Israel, of the larger Israel. And I don't think they're going to back down. It's not like South Africa where you had like F.W. de Klerk that stands up and says, all right, well, we're going to have to make some kind of concessions and we're going to have to do away with apartheid. I don't think that the Zionist group in Israel, the Israeli leadership, especially this far-right group that's running things right now, they don't see things that way. They see everything as like a gunfight or a final countdown. You would like to think that it won't go to that. And I think outside of U.S. pressure, there's really... I mean, I just don't have a good answer for you there. You have to read up on the subject and understand the mentality of these guys and the way they think.
What's your reaction to this kind of nationalist fervor that's happening in Israel right now because of this attack on the Gaza Freedom Flotilla?
It's actually a pretty common event. Israelis as a group tend to be pretty right-wing. I think like Netanyahu's personal poll numbers are up to like 59% in Israel right now. You see, that's the thing. It benefits these guys politically. You know, Netanyahu and Lieberman and Eli Yishai, whoever all is actually running the show in Israel right now, their poll numbers go up every time they conduct an assassination or a massacre or something like that. That's something the Israeli people are going to have to ask themselves one day. They're going to have to wake up like white people in the deep south in this country did one day and recognize that it's not okay for blacks to sit in the back of the bus. It's not okay to decide what your race is, whether or not you can sit at a lunch counter or not. I think that's ultimately up to Israeli Jews. They're going to have to wake up one day. Abba Eban, the foreign minister of Israel, in the late 1960s, the guy who was a foreign minister during the Six-Day War. Mr. Eban was he went to Cambridge. He was a very educated man, very intelligent guy, and I think he would weep today. I really do. I think him and Moshe Sharett and some of the other, relatively speaking, more liberal leaders of Israel in the early days of its founding, I think those guys would break down and cry, because this is not, I don't think this is what they intended. I don't think they intended this openly racist police state with these openly fascistic overtones. I don't think that's what they wanted, but that's what they got.
Netanyahu, you can't hide!
We charge you with genocide!
Israel, you can't hide!
We charge you with genocide!
Netanyahu, you can't hide!
We charge you with genocide!